Hi, it's Dwyer. Happy July 4th, everyone. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say, over the years, I've had my list of favorites, as we all do, in terms of announcers for fights, right? If you remember Howard Cosell years ago, he was spectacular. If you remember Alex Walu, he was spectacular. Right now, I think Sergio Mora is spectacular. But in my favorites folder right now, I have another one of the best I've heard. Right? Tim Bradley. And it matters because next week, Shakur Stevenson is going to fight William Zepeda. It's a much anticipated fight. I think the styles are going to be combustible. If you're studying that for that fight, to place your bets at a sports book, a must-see film, a must-see fight, is in my favorites folder right now, courtesy of Top Rank, who put the entire fight on YouTube. Right? This is not a bootleg version. This is not someone, with a feed copying the fight. No, Top Rank actually put the fight on. The fight's that good. Please, go to my favorites folder on YouTube. It's Shakur Stevenson. And he has an opponent in front of him who is trying to jump in the pocket. It's Yoshino. Right? And the second round has the whole thing. That's the round you need to watch. Right? The fight makes it to the sixth round, but it's the second round because, first, Tim Bradley is on his A game. He tells you what Yoshino has to do to win the fight. Right? It's a fascinating second round. Right? Yoshino's trying to get inside. He does on occasion. Bradley then tells you, once inside the pocket, he shouldn't be precise. Once in the pocket, he needs to brawl. He needs to just start hitting. Sharpshooter, Shakur Stevenson, wherever he can. Right then, of course, the action. Folks, this is a Stevenson who's on his A game and who showcases for you, and it's a showcase, just how good his straight left is. Stevenson, southpaw. So Stevenson catches Yoshino, who continually makes the mistake. And Yoshino is an orthodox fighter. Understand, Zepeda is a southpaw. That's a huge difference. Huge difference. But here, the orthodox fighter continually is moving into Stevenson's left hand. Stevenson knocks him down with a left hand. Then when Yoshino gets up, for the next 30 seconds, you get a showcase of one of the best straight lefts in the game. Stevenson just starts riddling him with lefts. And of course, Yoshino, who admittedly is not defensively blessed, has no clue how to get out of the way of Stevenson's straight left. Right? So then, of course, the round ends and you see the writing on the wall. You have an orthodox fighter who's literally moving into the left hand. You have Stevenson who is better at long range than he is short range. You have Stevenson with a wide stance. I believe the stance confuses righties. Right? He has a wide stance. He has a base under him. He's not running. And he's just able to throw that straight left into keyholes. Right? And he's hitting Yoshino flush. Folks, it's riveting footage. Let me just add a couple of extra comments, right? I believe I made a premium video for members only. I'm not going to talk betting strategy here, but let me just say this from a style perspective, right? Number one, no savvy fighter should ever move into Stevenson's left side. Folks, that straight left is pinpoint, right? That's the first point. The second point is Bradley's 100% right. Understand, Stevenson is different than Ali, right? Stevenson, and you'll see it in this footage, his feet are wide apart and he's relatively flat-footed, right? He moves extremely well. He has great legs. Don't get me wrong. He can move his feet and he can back up and readjust and set himself. But occasionally, he actually can be rushed on. Occasionally, you'll notice Yoshino gets in the pocket, but then smothers his own work. Right? Yoshino, one of the problems, and fighters need to think about the consequences, is Yoshino, a righty, wants to throw a straight right to Stevenson's body. But folks, he's facing a southpaw. So as he bends down to throw the right hand to Stevenson's body, he's naked for, let me say it again, one of the best straight lefts in the game. Right? I don't care how much you want to hurt Stevenson to the body. Right? The idea of bending over and throwing your right hand at Stevenson's body is a loser's game. Right now, I'm guessing Zepeda is not going to have that mindset because he's a southpaw. So if he wants to throw his power hand to Stevenson's body, his power hand lines up with Stevenson's right hand. Right? And Stevenson's right isn't Stevenson's left. Right? Let me also make a point too. People here online, myself included, talk about how in a different weight class, Alexander Usyk fought Arthur Beterbiev in the amateurs, and how Beterbiev was riddling his body with shots. Folks, you have to know what you're doing. Right? You can be a right-handed fighter. You have to know how to jump on the guy while having defense. Now, it's boxing orthodoxy to have rabbit ears. That doesn't work. Right? Because again, I have my hands up like this. I bend over, I throw this hand, I'm naked on this side. Right? Again, if my hands are like this and I throw this hand, I'm naked on this side, particularly if I'm throwing this hand to the body. Right? I'm bent over the pocket and I'm naked. Now, I keep telling people that one of the secrets to Archie Moore and his disciples, George Foreman, Ken Norton, is the idea that they actually have a hand draped. So now I come in, if I'm fighting like this, if I'm not with my hands on my side, or like Mike Tyson, my hands on my chin, right? If I actually have my hands crossed, then I can have a hand up while I'm throwing this hand. And if I tilt the hand, you have to thread the needle to hit me with a straight left. Right now, truth be told, Zepeda's not that advanced. defensively. So he's going to come in, but because he's a lefty, he'll be trying to land his left to Stevenson's body, not his right hand as Yoshino is doing. And Yoshino is paying a big price. He's so confused that even his movement is into Stevenson's straight left. So as Timothy Bradley suggests, what he needs to do, it sounds easy. For some reason, few can do it. What he needs to do, what he should have done, is jump in the pocket and just start throwing shots. If he wants to fight dirty, right, he could find a way to pull down Stevenson's guard when he's in the pocket. Because unlike Ali, who's bouncing, look at Ali's movement, right? He's on his toes and he's bouncing. What the bounce does is it throws off your rhythm. Right? You see Ali bouncing, you can't get hypnotized by the bounce because then Ali will throw a straight right hand off rhythm and hurt you. Right? You can't focus on Ali's feet. He wants you to focus on his feet. Right? Young Ali would shuffle. That's not Stevenson. Stevenson moves well, but he's flat-footed. Right? So there are times in this fight where Yoshino jumps in the pocket. At that point, he needed to fight dirty inside. For an example, right? It's one of boxing's best examples. The first Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran fight. Right? Ray's a great boxer. Ray's foolishly over by the ropes. Duran is, first off, not slowly trying to get in the pocket. He's outside, then he jumps in the pocket. Right? There has to be an element of surprise. He's smothering Ray's shots. If you look at Duran in the pocket, you'll see him holding Ray at times. I know it's illegal. Right? But understand, if you jump in the pocket against Shakur Stevenson, you have to hold his left hand because it's simply too lethal. You have to hold his left hand. In fact, everything you do should key off his left hand. You have to hold him. You have to stay close to him. Right? At one point in this fight, you'll notice Yoshino is right in front of Shakur Stevenson. The referee separates them. Stevenson slick. Stevenson then, of course, walks to the middle of the ring. You can't allow that to happen. Right? You have him over by the ropes. You see the referee stepping up. You need to find a way to back off just enough so the ref has nothing to break. And then you come back in the pocket. Right? Stevenson, balance-wise, needs to have his legs too far apart to quickly pivot away from you. Now again, that's different than Ali. You didn't know where Ali's legs were, right? Because he's jumping up and down. He's dancing. Stevenson moves well, but he doesn't dance. Right? So understand, because Zepeda is a southpaw, because I believe Zepeda should be able to not make the mistakes in terms of feet that Yoshino makes. Understand, the ref here is talking to Yoshino, warning him about feet. You always have the foot problem when you have an orthodox fighter against a southpaw. Right? There's always that issue of guys stepping on each other's feet and stuff like that. And Stevenson exploits it because Stevenson has his legs wide apart. Here, while Stevenson has his legs wide apart, Zepeda needs to use that opportunity to jump in the pocket and to hit Stevenson anywhere. Just what Timothy Bradley says on the telecast. Right? Listen to Bradley in the second round. Right? Zepeda needs to come in. If it takes hitting Stevenson on the arm, you hit him on the arm. Understand Rocky Marciano's mindset. He believed that if he could hit you on the bicep and stuff like that, he was weakening that arm. Right? So he would come in and you would have a guard up and he'd hit your guard. Right? You're going to have to do things like that against Stevenson to be effective. The Yoshino fight is one of the few fights where an opponent was not intimidated by Stevenson and tried to jump in on him. The problem is, of course, he gets dropped in the second round, he gets stopped in the sixth round. Right? Because he didn't get the memo that Stevenson is a southpaw with a lethal straight left. Right? What you need is someone who gets the memo and who understands, I need to structure my game so I'm not leaving my right side naked to Stevenson's pinpoint straight left. Right? If that takes a different defensive construct, great. If it takes parking your right hand, that should be easier for a southpaw whose, primary hand is his left. Right? That should be easier for Zepeda than it was for Yoshino. Let me say this too. Stevenson is a master at timing. Right? He's a master at accuracy and countering you. So when you're up against a guy like this, I want people to remember the knockdown in the James Toney, master counterpuncher, Roy Jones fight. Right? Jones, who raised chickens, by his own admission, does a chicken move. Right? Jones is looking at Toney. Jones understands he can't just come in on Toney. He has to feint his way in. Because Toney's a counterpuncher who's trying to counter what you do. So you have to bluff what you're doing. So Jones has his hands apart, like a chicken. And he goes like this, Toney bites, and then Jones, with his hand already extended, uses that arm as a hook. Right? What Zepeda needs to do is Zepeda needs to not just try to run in on Shakur Stevenson, so he has that left cocked and ready, as he does this Yoshino fight. Right? No, he needs to feint like he's jumping in the pocket. Again, Roberto Duran, he needs to be outside, he needs to feint, then jump in the pocket, then stay in the pocket. Of course, from the Shakur Stevenson side, they just saw a southpaw. I know he got blown out by Kid Austin, right, in a fight where we really didn't learn much. But Stevenson just saw Tevin Farmer go the distance twice with William Zepeda. And understand, Farmer isn't a big puncher. Right? Farmer doesn't have anything as crisp as Shakur Stevenson's straight left. Right? So there is a moment where Zepeda gets knocked down against Farmer. Right? Farmer's very cagey. And I'm sure the feeling is that Zepeda is too offensive, doesn't have proper balance as he comes forward and can be countered. Right? So that fight is going to be a battle of styles. Right? Opening question is going to be, how does Zepeda deal with sharpshooter Shakur Stevenson straight left? Right? Well, he's a southpaw. How does Stevenson deal with the fact that Zepeda theoretically could be defensively minded on his right side without it impacting his primary weapon? Right? Also, Shakur Stevenson's right side? Is Zepeda going to be able to set up shop there? Because Zepeda's front foot heavy. His default is to be on his front foot to come in against you. Also, how does Stevenson deal with Zepeda's superior volume? On this top-ranked telecast, they tell you that Stevenson has hardly ever lost a round in any of his fights. And understand, this is a 2023 fight. This isn't even a 2019 fight. This is a recent fight. And Stevenson, for the huge body of work he put in going into the fight, had lost something like less than 10 rounds out of hundreds of rounds. Right? So Stevenson is a guy who seduces judges. Will he be able to against a high-volume opponent like a William Zepeda, who, because he's a southpaw, has less to worry about in terms of Stevenson's straight left than a righty does? Right? Folks, it's an intriguing fight. As you study it, please consider the second round, right? Not all rounds are created equal. The second round's noteworthy, too, because Stevenson catches Yoshino, right? And then puts on a straight left fest for the next, let's say, 25, 30 seconds, right? That's worth the price of admission. Also, early in fights, the announcers tend to give you a macro view. Later in fights, they then start talking about what happened in the fight, right? What they're seeing. But early in fights, you know, Bradley highlights the fact that when Yoshino jumped in the pocket, he needed to just unload the gun. Right? And let me say, Bernard Hopkins knows this. Roberto Duran knows this. When you're in the pocket, you can do things. The ref doesn't have a good view. The ref sees you and, you know, he sees your back. He doesn't quite see what's going on. So you'd be surprised what happens in the pocket. If you revisit the Lennox Lewis-Michael Grant fight, Lennox Lewis jumped in the pocket and used the opportunity to grab the back of Grant's head. I'm not kidding. And Lewis, a puncher, started punching Grant while holding him. A big no-no. Right? Against a guy like Stevenson, who's a precise technician, you've got to be rough and tumble. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Let me point out, too, the greatness of Duran is that when he fought Blade Barkley, right, who was recently in a hospital. I need for folks to keep track of these fighters from the 80s. Great fighter who beat Thomas the Hitman Hearns twice, right? The second time by decision. When Duran fought Blade, just understand, Blade was rough and tumble in the pocket, so Duran actually wins that fight from the outside, right? As good as Roberto Duran was. And, of course, Duran's fighting out of division, right? Duran's really a lightweight. We know him in his second act, right? But understand that Blade Barkley fight's interesting because Duran stays outside against Blade Barkley, and Duran, of course, had the skill set to stay outside. This is the same guy who roughed up Ray Leonard inside in their first fight. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.